And we are live, I would say. At least it looks like it.
Hello.
I'm not sure. You never know with this thing, but
Yeah.
I suppose it says we're live, so I think we are live. But at least according to the viewers count, which is slowly picking up. Fantastic. So a very warm welcome to what is the last episode of the year, kind of the Christmas, freshly squeezed Christmas edition of PKs on Air.
And it's the 26th. I just had a look back.
You did a count because you knew I would not be knowing it. Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Well done. At least someone is prepared.
I think we lost track on that.
But it's interesting, right? I mean, 26th episode. It is quite some time that we have been doing this craziness. Yeah, and today I think so. We're not gonna waste too much time, right? Today we are actually not alone. In fact, we have 1, 2, 3 exciting guests that we're gonna get in just about a minute, and we're gonna be discussing, well, a lot of things, I would say. Mostly search, maybe not entirely. Depends on how drunk we get them. Maybe it's some other stuff as well. Anyhow, that said, very, very quickly, a couple of housekeeping notes. Please, if you want to chat along, thanks Mariano for the gute Besserung. Yeah, my voice sounds not so nice today. I will shut up relatively soon and let just Dominique talk. That's the deal, at least. I'm swallowing those gums, so apologize if that looks a bit strange. Anyhow, we if you want to chat along, we should be live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and the likes, YouTube as well. So feel free to kind of drop your comments. We're gonna happily answer questions in between. And if you kind of have been following the show, we have the show notes live on the website. So there's going to be a recap every week. That's pa.ag/notes if you want to kind of poke around, need some links and whatnot. So things that we kind of essentially discussed in the previous episodes. It's all going to be there. And now, I would say without further ado, we get our fantastic panel in. So let's see if this works. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Looks, I have to say though, like if you compare this to like the other platforms that we've been using, StreamYard actually does a quite decent job. It's actually a really good tool, and I think one of those winners from this entire pandemic. So, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. Glad to have you all on board. So I'm not sure if the order looks the same for everyone else, but maybe we just do a very, very quick round of introductions, and obviously. Ladies first. So Julia, if you wanna start very quickly, be very happy.
Hi everyone. I'm happy to be back. It's been a long time since I've been PKs on air, and
indeed
been very busy. So yeah, I'm Julia. I'm head of PPC at PKs. So actually, it's like all the PKs is on the top row for me.
Yeah.
Same here. Yeah.
Can I move this around? I can't. Whatever. Okay.
So I guess they already categorized us well.
Yeah,
so
clearly.
No, but yeah, I take care of anything PPC head PKs. So Google Ads, Microsoft Ads, Yandex, whatever it may be, is under my watch. And yeah, I'm looking forward to discussing a little bit today.
Yeah. And then we have, well, I mean, you all know Dominique, so Dominique doesn't get an intro. I don't get an intro as well. That's fine.
Hi again.
Exactly. This is how it works. Hi, bye. Next on the list, for me at least, is Mr. Hellemans. Arnoud.
Hi. Yeah, some of you might know me. I'm the mayonnaise logo on Twitter, and I love to eat oysters. And well, basically, Arnoud Hellemans. I live in Amsterdam, 44 years old, and I optimize websites, mostly from a search perspective, but not only, because there's other things also important. And I do it for various brands. And the latest two I've been working on are NatWest RBS in the UK and The Next Web.
Very nice.
Yep.
Thanks for taking the time to join us.
My pleasure.
Much appreciated. Cool. And then we have Nick.
Yep. Hi, Bastian. Nick Wilsdon. I've been in SEO for 20 odd years now. I'm 1 year older than Arnoud. That's good. I'm the oldest on the call. I've worked with a range of people, and a lot of people know me from working with Vodafone, where I've led the group SEO program. I've moved away from that. I've been working with partner markets across 40 countries for them recently, and also with the eBay technical team globally. So that's probably where you'll find me most now.
Very nice, very nice. So, I mean, it has been an interesting year, right? So I thought before we kind of get into the trenches of search, if you so will, and then we kind of get lost because it already happened. Like for those that, well, you couldn't see us, but like it literally took 5 minutes and we were already chatting deep in all things Search Console and whatnot. So before that happens again, which is great. So Nick, I saw that I think you have had an interesting couple of, 10 days now or 12 days with how many puppies?
12 days of puppies. Yeah, no, this is, I've realized that nobody wants to hear me talk about SEO. They'd rather just post puppies every day. So, so I'm now going to, no longer put anything SEO related on my feed.
The interaction is probably quite high, right?
We actually, I had the project for IBM for a while where we were doing this as part of the outreach and the social team, and we tried so hard to come up with different campaigns for them. And then one time we put up a kitten using one of their laptops, and it was just the most successful thing we'd ever done. And you kind of do that, and you think, why am I trying so hard? Why don't I, So yeah, it's been but it's been really fun. Yeah, I mean, I think it's Christmas. Everyone's had a pretty hard year, so
yeah,
that's put a few nice pictures up, and I think everyone's ready really to down tools this year. I'm getting that feeling definitely from other people.
No, I think that's pretty much true, right? I mean, so what I mean beyond dog sitting and posting dog pictures, puppy pictures to Twitter. So I mean, as you said, it has been a tough year in a lot of senses, right? So what I mean, if you look at it from a more personal level, I mean, I guess we all have met at events. We're going to talk about events a bit later as well, around the globe, and spend a lot of time traveling from here to there and whatnot. What has changed for you? I mean, with the entirety of the situation. I mean, you're probably working from home. So what else is what do you say is the most significant change for you personally?
I think my work's changed a lot. I mean, I'd always kind of planned to do that transition away from more of an in-house role at Vodafone to having basically started my own consultancy, really. So I'm working with several other experts in that field, some here, and it's been great to kind of broaden out my client base and bring on some new projects. And I'm finding that the projects I'm doing now are very international. I mean, when you're working with eBay, you're on phone calls between Tel Aviv, Munich, London, San Francisco. So it's become very international. So I tend to be here quite a lot. I've got the mics and the whiteboards, and I've got a very nice home office. So my my home environment's been really good. But I think it's the amount of work that we've all done this year has been quite extraordinary, because I used to do a lot of traveling, and I think that gave you little breaks in between the work, and we're all kind of workaholics, and we wouldn't be doing what we do now. So without those sort of forced breaks, I think we do tend to put a lot of hours in. So I've certainly been doing a lot of work this year.
Yeah. No, I feel the same. I think
you can also that.
Yeah. It's got to say, right? I mean, for us, it's the same, and it's kind of a mental year, and then you kind of want to kind of ensure that everything works out in the end, right? And I think we all put also quite a bit of hours in looking at my two ladies on the top row. I think we all kind of deserved a bit of a break as well. Very true. So Arnoud, how is it for you? I mean, you probably also, I mean, the same for you, right? You mentioned you kind of spent also quite a bit of time with your clients, I think on the ground in the UK, if I recall correctly. Yeah. So how's that for you? Is that still happening? Is it just reduced? Is it off for now? How's it going for you?
So basically it's working from home, just as the rest of us. I've seen some interesting things happening, especially in large corporations. Basically, when people have more time and are not being caught up in all kinds of meetings, I've basically seen stuff happening way faster. Yeah. So when you're trying to change and make change in a large corporation, that is the hardest thing to do. And now, like, the people that need to make the decisions, they've got the headspace to actually sit back and go, okay, what are we doing? What are we trying to achieve? So I think in that respect, it's been an amazing year. I think for me as a consultant, what is the hardest part is that I'm not part of a team. So I'm really a one-man band, which equals to me and my laptop. And my wife gets a bit fed up with me talking about certain whatever. So that is a very hard thing. On the other hand, as Nick was also saying, so I normally would travel to the UK every week. So you get a lot of hours back. And this has been like the time to finally start implementing stuff, testing more, like all the things that were in my head, I could now actually implement with clients. And that's been really cool. So professional. And I think we're in the right line of business, aren't we? Like everything goes online. So. And so it's been a very weird year, but I think personally, I'm completely fed up with it.
I guess we can all somewhat relate. Yeah. Do you have any additional thoughts? I mean, you probably see it a bit from the other side, right? I mean, the one man or one woman band in this case, I suppose, is not entirely accurate. But I mean, what's your take on that? I mean,
yeah, I mean, I have to say, for me, I must definitely split the time into those two buckets. It was the time when we were working from home versus the time when we went back to the office in July. Like things changed quite drastically in both those periods for me. It was like the first lockdown. Everything sort of slowed down with clients, with everything kind of stopped, you know. And there, for me, it was like a lot of time to, like, I mean, we had to figure so many things out, so it was still super stressful. But then I working from home, I started to like doing all kinds of personal things that I never had time before, and I got really into my fitness regime and did all kinds of things. So it was good for my work-life balance. That was one thing, but I realized quite quickly how we were losing touch with the team, because I'm not just because we don't work alone, we work in a team, and usually what holds us all together in the agency is like working in the trenches together. Like sometimes you have to go through tough times, and that's what was a bit hard for me, because I couldn't be there as much for people as I wanted to. You always had to kind of arrange a call or a meeting with someone, which for me was a bit of a hassle. You know, when I'm just sitting at my desk, people come to me all the time, and that's just part of my job. I mean, I of course I had a lot more focus time in home office, but it was like a negative on the other side as well. So yeah, that was the first time, and then from July onwards, it's just been a bit madness since then. I don't know what happened, but because it seems like things went sort of a bit more normal in summer, and the whole COVID situation wasn't as bad anymore. Also, clients were coming back. You know, we started to having a lot of pitches again. We did so many things. So yeah, since then it's just been very intense, a very intense period in terms of amount of work to do and how much, you know, we've worked on getting clients for the agency and make everyone get the amount of work they deserve that we didn't have enough in the first lockdown. So yeah, that kind of sums it up for me. And I'm definitely also sick of it, even though I'm not at home. I'm just waiting for it to be over, because I want to be back with everyone in the team and do all the things we did in the past that held us together as an agency. I'm really missing it. And yeah, I really can't wait for the time this is going to be over, but it's going to be quite some months left of this, I think. So yeah.
Very, very true. I guess that's I mean, that's the issue, right? The issue is really that, I mean, even though we kind of went through it, and like I guess all like countries somewhat dealt with it a bit differently, some better, some worse. I think now, and we just were saying it before we started, like now everyone else is, or now we are all back to some kind of lockdown situation again, because well, and I'm not gonna kind of exclude myself here, but like there's certainly some people that haven't kind of been paying too much attention to rules, and now we essentially literally all I'm not going to use the F word now, but like as a collective, right? So we're kind of all suffering to an extent, which is frankly, and I agree, it's quite annoying. But yeah, I guess we all have to deal with it to an extent, I would imagine.
I think you got a fundamental conflict though in probably in the West between individualism and something that needs a collective response. And this is a problem with COVID. It absolutely needs a collective response.
Yeah, very much so.
That's kind of exposed a bit of an issue really around these kind of things.
Yeah, no, that's true. So I mean, but it actually leads quite nicely into another question that I meant to ask you guys, because so I mean, we kind of, I think I can't even recall when, but I guess I met all of you at like different events around the world somewhere. Not really big surprise, but so I mean, I frankly, maybe I just give my very quick take, and we kind of had an episode back a couple of weeks on that as well, like where we were talking, Dominique and I think it was past SMX Munich, if I recall correctly, which was like the only real like hybrid event that we've been actually doing this year. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on the event space? I mean, you're all quite familiar with it. You have attended a lot of the different ones, especially also in the UK, but not only. So I'm curious. Maybe Nick, you wanna start out? But like, what's your take on events? Are we gonna be seeing any in-person events next year, or is it all a waste of time anyways, and we only need virtual events? What are your thoughts?
No, I think people will start to bring some events back next year, but for the large companies, I mean, they're not planning on bringing people back into the offices until July, really. So, and then they're talking about sort of non-essential travel again. So the idea that people from larger enterprises are going to be going off to events next year, I think, is probably not going to happen. So yeah, it's certainly going to put pressure on the events in terms of attendees. I think people want to get together, and there's certainly a big atmosphere I see online of people getting back together and having an event next year. And but yeah, I'm a bit worried about the event scene. But I think COVID, like many other industries, COVID's kind of exposed sort of weaknesses that exist within that industry and accelerated it. And then I think conferences were already having some issues before COVID, if I'm honest. You tended to get the same people speaking quite often, and the topics often didn't go into things as far in depth as you'd like that to happen. And there's also there's a larger problem within SEO, I'd say, at the moment, where SEO has become such a broad church now that it's no longer possible to appeal to all those people at one event. And you have large enterprise SEO. I mean, the things that I end up doing for some of my clients are completely different from something you do for a smaller client. It's just you can go into the detail. You can really lose yourself with a very, very small issue because the ROI exists because it's such a large client. So the change has value. So there's just very different types of SEO, and the fact that we have an industry that goes, an SEO can be anything from someone who does outreach and does campaigns, or all the way through to someone who does JavaScript SEO or handling indexing issues on your site. That's a huge spectrum now, and then I think conferences have to kind of I think almost reboot to deal with that to make them more appealing.
Yeah, understood. I agreed. Dominique, so what's your take on that? I mean, you've been doing a bunch of events throughout the year as well, like kind of spoken at virtual events as well. Like curious on your thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, I have always those two sides when I think about events in my mind. So I really, really enjoy being at live events, so in-person events, and I truly must say I miss it a lot. So to meet partners and clients there, but also like just interesting people there for like knowledge exchange. So this is what I'm missing a lot, and where I didn't found like that much like virtual conferences where they made it possible to have like the networking perspective. So this is what I'm missing the most. I think, of course, I mean, there are a lot of benefits when we talk about like virtual events. It's like, of course, more time efficient, more cost efficient. You do not have like those travel expenses. So there are a lot of pros, I would say. But what I've also seen during the year was, as you mentioned, we have discussed that very much in detail during, I think it was in September or October, that we saw, I guess, a lot of like big content overload, let's say, when we talk about like educational content. So I don't know, in summer this year, something happened that there was so much content out there, like PDFs and white papers and conferences and webinars and everything around that. I mean, we are part of that, right? So there was so much out there where I just lost completely track on that and wasn't able anymore to decide, okay, which kind of webinar I should join now, which kind of quality is behind that, because there's another problem I think Nick already mentioned. So we had like at the typical SEO events, we see like more or less like the same people and speakers at all of those events. So this is something which definitely changed during like the virtual events, but it's not that easy to find out where should I join and which kind of webinar I should join, right? Because it's not pretty much clear which kind of quality is there behind. So I'm something in between, I would say. But but this is, I would say, it's on my wish list for next year to join in-person events again.
Right. So Arnoud, I think the two of us have probably missed more sessions together drinking than actually attending sessions. If I'm very honest, I think the last one that comes to my mind was the one where we've been sitting at this where was it? Where we've been sitting at this restaurant bar thing and overwatching the sea. Was that?
Oh, that was Slovenia in orbit.
Slovenia, yeah, in orbit, exactly. So. And so therefore, that said, I think, you also like one of those people that kind of spend a lot of time networking, right? And just meeting people. And I think this is also one thing that I really think is like that a lot of people underestimate the value of a network. Of course, you guys are in kind of in the industry for a very long time. So of course, network also means building it up over time. But so what do you think? Is that something that's currently suffering? Is that something that can be substituted with something else, or what do you think?
Well, two things. I don't really like the word networking, purely because I'm not there to network. I'm there to meet people that I can bounce ideas off or that can inspire me. So the problem I'm having is, or that occurred a few years ago, is I could go to a session, but there were only if there were 40 sessions, there were 3 little nuggets in there. But how do you find them? Whilst when you hang out in the bar and talk to people about issues you're having, and I'm more than willing to help people, but at some point it also helps me sharpen my own ideas and get inspired from another insight. So for me, that was the most important thing. And I was lucky enough to be invited for an in-person event in October in Tuscany. It was a very small event. There were 9 speakers and 22 attendees. We had social distancing and everything. But what I really enjoyed is just meeting people and having these conversations. And I've yet to find a platform that will allow me to do that, to just say, let's jump in a separate room, discuss this, because in a lot of cases, I don't necessarily want to talk and put everything I'm working on out on the street for everyone. But in some cases, I do. And whilst in offline, that's easier to do. So I think that's a really big thing. And the other part is that I think having this in place, for instance, Brighton SEO, I found a really interesting and nice concept. There were very good talks, and it was actually quite fun. But
I think sorry, Arnoud. The main reason why you enjoy Brighton SEO is that because you can go sit outside and have a beer. Let's be honest here. Come on up.
Maybe it was the reason that I actually was able, on a second screen, to follow some talks where I normally don't even make those talks.
That is true.
So maybe that was it. But what I kind of so that's the part. And the other thing is that there's so much more people joining because there's no barrier to travel. So the level of people, and I started out all the way down, so it makes perfect sense. But these are now all in the audience. So as a speaker, you now have to figure out, oh, maybe I should start with the very beginning of what a crawler is before going into this is how Google renders the page, and this is so I think that's also part of a challenge here.
Yeah,
and
very true.
I do agree with Nick that at some point we'll have more the specialized events, and I think something that is like Measure Camp or what is it called, or Conversion Hotel, where they have a whole day of just having unconference. So you just walk in and say, this is what I want to talk about. And everybody goes there. There's no presentation or what. You just have a discussion and a chat. And I think those kind of events will start picking up at smaller levels. So that's what I would love.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones that have value for us, absolutely. And we do this because we're passionate about it. We love doing this. You wouldn't do this many hours on it.
That's the point. That's the point. Yeah.
So
you need to do this over the weekend, because then people need to give up their weekend.
Yeah, which we'd do.
Yeah, most of us probably. So there's an interesting take. I'm going to just quickly push it in here. So Alexander, hi Alex, by the way. So if Alex says, even if offline events are nice, remote recorded information is much better for information transfer. So he says, like, you can watch it, you can pause, you can discuss it with the team, etc. Yuria, what do you think? Is that would you agree? Would you say like, well, maybe not? So what's your take?
I do agree that it's nice to kind of digest the content in the time you might need it, and you can watch it back whenever you want it. I think that's a nice aspect of all the online conferences and webinars. However, I still don't think that people take as much time to consume online content as much as when you just take your time, go to a conference in person, and you're much more in the mindset to consume all the and to share knowledge and consume all that content. That's how I believe it is, but I do agree with the point that Alexander is making. It's definitely one positive of the online events, but I find myself in between. I like also online webinars, but I rarely then take the time because the daily life. And
that's the point, right? There's like you're always like, this is always a competition between the screen and your inbox and some other things that you're doing.
And so I don't have that when I'm at a conference. So.
Exactly. This is probably the major challenge, But it's a valid point, I think, right?
But this is the issue, isn't it, with online conferences? They've basically taken the format offline. They've moved it online, and that's ridiculous because nobody's going to sit through 8 back-to-back Zoom calls. Nobody. So, if we understand search, why didn't we apply that to online conferences? Why can't you, for example, have bits that everyone likes, like in Medium, where people pull out passages or really good bits from different talks, and you could then zoom in and see those bits that were recommended by all the attendees. I mean, we could do more interesting things, and like Arnoud says, having breakout rooms, engagement, one-to-one sessions, almost speed dating, networking. We could have done some really interesting things online, but I think too many of the organisers have just transplanted it just online, and that doesn't work when we're all busy.
But it goes back to what you were saying. They were just kind of overrun by the fact that there were flaws in the system already somewhat before.
Yeah, and I think another part in this is like, I've seen so many. What I don't get is if you do a paid conference, send everybody a good mic and a good webcam. What's the investment? For fuck's sakes. Sorry. But it really, to me,
that's very true.
Like I've seen like big paid events where people would sit there with their webcam on their old laptop going all gray and breaking up, and it's like, come on, just invest in it. And
I think this has been the rule for 2020, though. I mean, the number of politicians I've seen that have had bad laptops and internet connection. You're like, you're the Secretary of State. Come on, let's your webcam. What the hell?
Yeah,
I mean, for them it was all. I think it is actually not was. It is still all very new. So
but I think there's a business in there. There's a business in there going around.
There's certainly a business in there. Yeah. I mean, anyhow. So moving on before we get lost in events and politics, which is a good idea. But yeah, I would also say, I mean, it would be good to get at least some of the travel back. Otherwise, I'm going to go crazy. So I suppose some traveling is needed. Yeah. Anyhow, another thing that I kind of wanted to talk about a bit for today, and so I think we have two slightly different camps, if you so will. So maybe we start out with you, yeah. That's going to be actually fun. No, just because it's paid search. So what I want to chat about is a bit in regards to Google, obviously. But no, I mean, so two things. So the one thing is, was there one thing that where you were specifically, I would say, kind of surprised by what they have done this year? And then also, maybe on top of it, what's your take? So what is going to be the most surprising thing for next year?
Yeah.
Any ideas, thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's been so many things in 2020 that Google has been doing that, I have this very not so great feeling about, because there's been changes like, from like the digital text being passed on to advertisers, to like the thing with the search query reports being less transparent, a lot of things going into the direction more and more automation, less transparent, and yeah, I think that's one thing that for me was not a great direction to go, but it's obviously understandable where it comes from. So I do think this is kind of a trend that will continue also in 2021, that Google will increasingly take away control from advertisers, which for small advertisers that do things themselves, it might not be a very big issue, but for agencies like us that want to do like complex things and have interesting strategies where we can have as much control as we can, there it becomes a bit difficult. I think, we do have to embrace automation and the change, and we are definitely, as you know, PKs, we are really keen on automation. We love our scripts, 9 workflows, and whatever is out there. We do a lot of that, but we really see a difference in things. Okay, this is stuff I want to automate, and where I see sense in it, and then there's some things where I just feel that we lose impact where we want it. So I think it's really hard for me to say that auto-applied recommendations or anything like this, which is coming, is anything that we would ever want to use, because that's kind of what we are there to help the client with. And if you look through the recommendations tab in the Google Ads accounts, there might be relevant recommendations in there, but there's a lot of stuff there that we just don't see sense in for our clients, which you can only know when you work on this account and okay, this is really makes absolutely no sense. I'm not going to implement this. If I just say to Google, please go ahead, just implement all of it, even though it doesn't make sense for my client. This is the direction I highly doubt we want to go towards, but it will come more and more. So we have to deal with that, and see how we can deal with all those changes. That's like my biggest thing, what I think will happen in 2021, even more than it already happened this year. So curious to hear other people's thoughts.
I'm sure Arnoud has a take on that as well. So
I completely agree, and I really had saw a really interesting presentation, because I think the biggest challenge with automating this, especially for also smaller advertisers, is that what you feed the algorithm as success basically feeds into the bidding and everything. So with smart goals in analytics, they set up the goals, they basically start bidding on it, they create your ads, and they say, well, it's fine. But then the goal might be 3 pages or more visited, and you're now paying £10 a day purely on getting people to do that. So what I'm saying is that I feel I don't get why big advertisers, unless they got a break, didn't just go in and go, what the heck are you doing, Google? We're paying for it. Why are you taking it away? I really don't get it. because I shared some screenshots on Twitter going, hey, Twitter, or hey, look, Twitter, this is my Google Ads account. I've got 4 conversions and no search terms. How the heck am I going to optimize for what's working? And the other thing I really agree with is that a lot of the things that I see in recommendations, if I would implement everything, get 100% recommendation, I'd probably lose the client.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm currently at 55, and I don't feel it's a very nice play that Google is playing, because my client goes and says it's only 50% optimized, or it's only 60% optimized. I'm like, well, but look at the CPA I'm getting you. I'm not going to do it anymore because I might lose it. So I feel that we're really getting squeezed as agencies or consultants helping on this. But I don't really know where to go, apart from moving more in the analytics direction, where we can steer towards what a goal is and how we can start steering that machine learning algorithm.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you as well. And I do think that one thing that we see a lot, and is definitely a direction that I think us as agencies will go more and more towards, is the whole tech and marketing technology direction. We have our own marketing technology team at PGAs, for example, and we really see how this is becoming a more and more vital part, because all that you want to focus on is really getting all the data that the clients have themselves, like get all of that sorted out, get your first party data right, get all that tracking as complex as you can, you know, from like importing like offline conversions through Zapier or whatever it may be, to really inform the algorithms from Google better. Like that's really the direction we're heading to, and that's the things we can still really support clients with, because this is the stuff that's very complex and where they might say like, okay, I'm not sure I can do this myself, I need some help. But yeah, I still think it's putting us into a difficult situation, because we still are the ones that have to do strategic thinking in those accounts. And, you know, as you say, there's this score, you know, the client sees it themselves, they start questioning things, then Google ends up going to the clients directly, starting to tell them how to structure an account, and we're an agency, we're in between. Uncomfortable situations that happened this year that has not happened before, and I'm really not liking where this is going. And we're giving this feedback. We're giving so much feedback to Google, because, as you said, you don't understand how large advertisers don't go like, stop what you're doing now. I mean, I think many advertisers do go on social media and stuff, but we really try to speak to our Google contacts and say, I'm sorry, but these changes, this is not any way useful for us as agencies or for advertisers. Like, we are losing the control, and you're starting to suggest things that make no sense for my client. How can I? And now we're always in this in-between situation. As you said, we're being squeezed by both sides, and it's not a comfortable position to be in. So I'm really curious how that's gonna develop. And because I want to work together with Google, and I want them to be successful. It's Google is one of the main things I spend my time on. So it would be a shame if it all goes into a direction we don't want it to go to.
But it's kind of a recurring topic, right? I think I'm quite sure Nick is already grinning because of that. I mean, it's not that we haven't seen that in SEO for years and years, right? I mean, I was just thinking of this very nonsense like page speed insight score that we had.
Yeah, this I was going to say. We're quite lucky. I mean, in SEO, because SEO is gaining a lot of popularity in enterprise, so it's getting more and more attention now. But obviously, Google has never really been able to advise on SEO, and they're still very reluctant to do that. I mean, when you talk to them on that area, they will only talk to you about performance, and largely that performance in the scores that they have, and their performance methodology is actually gaining a lot of ground. I mean, they really have gained ground on the more, what do you call it, like traditional performance tools and platforms are out there. They really have gained a lot of ground, and but everything else is really around, you know, AMP, and that's pretty much the advice you'll get from them. And so in my area, which is technical SEO, you know, you're never going to have automation to that extent to find those problems. And even though there's some large brand name tools that we won't mention who claim to do that, there's absolutely no way that they can look at a large enterprise site and tell you what's wrong, but then also prioritize it to the business value of fixing those things. And I don't think I'll ever be able to do that. So so I'm quite lucky in that respect. And I do look at, you know, paid colleagues and feel quite sorry. They're encroaching so much on that territory, and it's really and I think where that's gone wrong as well is Google always, you know, we like to say it's about the mom and pops, but it's not really, is it? They're always thinking at the top level, and you know, for the smaller people bidding, or even SMEs, you know, they're not going to have enough volume going through to get all the benefits from that kind of automation. And this is the bit that they just don't talk about. So you have small businesses that are pushing money into Google, but they're never going to have enough volume to really make use of all that technology. So yeah, I do feel very sorry for paid people. It's
Thanks.
I'll say the one good thing that's happening on SEO, we've got a new, because you know, SEO and PPC have never been particularly together. We've always tried to make that work, and yeah, we like each other. But the one area that has worked particularly for me recently has been in terms of taking all of the Search Console data and pushing it into AWS or BigQuery, because you know, you're looking, you know, Search Console is becoming really valuable for all of us now. It's gone from something that was a bit kind of fluffy to something we really do check now, and you're logging in and you're seeing, you know, it's 1,000 rows a day that you can view. If you get it into Data Studio, you can see 5,000 rows, which is great, and it's free. But if you're using the API, you can get 50,000 rows. So instantly you're pulling out a huge amount of data every day. You're just mining Search Console every day for this data. And I've used that a lot with paid colleagues, because as they're losing that conversion data on small terms, especially in the B2B market, you can then start to give them an alternative source of data, which is really handy. And that's really gone down well between the groups.
Yeah, I really like that thinking, and we're starting to work a lot with BigQuery as well. It's like the new thing that we're focusing on, like getting all accounts in there and doing all kinds of automation as well based on the data we see there. It's really the way forward.
Yeah. Absolutely, and we're going to get cleverer with what we do with it, but the first step is absolutely to start collecting it. And every day you're not collecting it because you have that rolling 16 months, you're losing a day. So you have to get around to doing this, and the where it's beginning to work is where you built up a database sufficient enough to actually start to do some more interesting insight into it around, you know, questions that are being asked and feeding that into the support team, the who, what, where, you know, really mining it for this kind of data, because you're getting all of the data that applies to your site, but also obviously the impressions aren't clicks through to your domain. That's impressions for the entire, you know, SERP. So there is a huge amount of value in that data, but and it's a very simple thing to collect it. And I think what Google's doing is they're saying, well, you know, if you're a big brand, you can pay for this, you're paying for storage, for computation in BigQuery, then we're going to give you this data, and that's great. And it's kind of the arrangement, isn't it?
But Nick, even for smaller websites with the add-in in Sheets, the search analytics for Sheets can do the same, and then it's completely free. So even if you have smaller, because not everybody, it's quite intimidating, I guess, for a lot of smaller advertisers. Say you need to set everything up in BigQuery. You can also do it, including backups, with the Search Analytics for Sheets plugin, and then it will just run and give you all the data. But I agree.
Oh, absolutely, no, that's a good solution. Then I mean, you know, I'm a big fan of Data Studio, so I'm just doing a lot of matching things up in Data Studio.
Who isn't these days?
I think it's changing our relationship with the tools, because previously we'd say, well, I'm in this tool or I'm in this tool. I don't care now. What I want from the tool is I want API access, and I want to be aggregated level. And I want those tools to be to just be you know, interpreting data and applying transitions to it. I don't really want them to be storing all my SEO data. I just want them to be doing something specific to give that data back to me.
How I found it quite fascinating that again, this needs a Google product to make this shift of a mindset, which is really pissing me off, because because I mean, it's not that I don't know, the likes of Tableau or something like that haven't been there a long time ago, Just no one's ever,
Yeah, but Tableau licenses are so expensive, and this is a problem. It's the your democratization of data analysis. That's what we've done. We've given Data Studio to everybody, so now everyone can play with it, and the teams can play with it. Previously, for a large enterprise, you'd have Tableau, but you can imagine your data team is so busy. I mean, they've got big problems to deal with. They haven't got time for the SEO department. Let's put it like that. So this has allowed it to SEO departments to get into data analysis and actually start to produce stuff that's useful for the business.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I mean, and then it's just a matter of time when they start charging us for using it. They will have studio views or some shit like that. I'm just curious when that's going to happen. But we shall see. So, Dominique, from the organic perspective, what did surprise you most this year?
What surprised me most? I mean, in terms or out of a content perspective, I mean, we have talked about it many times, I guess. I was quite confused but also happy a bit at the same time to see like the Corona, like the sticky menu again on this app. So that was quite interesting for me. Also followed by like the implementation of this kind of like health portal from the German government on the German side of Google. So that was quite interesting out of the content perspective and what's going to happen over there, because this comes definitely with a lot of opportunities also in terms of content, but also with some thoughts about how this gonna be end up. But this was quite interesting for me. And what I've seen as well is of course in terms of speaking of content, the whole year was quite a bit like test. I mean, we are always into like test and learn periods, but this year was like completely different when we talk about like content promotion on an organic way, like getting in touch with media outlets, with any kind of prospects, also trying to find out which kind of recognition our content gets, and also how fast your content can be irrelevant, which is after the content production. So this was quite interesting, and not that easy, I would say. We had a lot of back and forth with content creation in terms of, so the whole content strategy was completely like messed up. We had a lot of content campaigns postponed, of course. So what happened there is that I talked with many people creating content, also in the field of SEO, like performing content. Everybody said that it's like content, or the part of creating content, gets way more agile during that year, because a lot of people decided to go through or to go more with like shorter content formats, and because you don't know what's going to happen in two weeks or next week maybe. So this is the major part, and I mean, of course, I'm completely into campaigning and also into interactive campaigns, which takes a lot of time and planning in advance. This was not that easy this year, I would say, unless you are completely confident that your topic will be relevant during the next, 6 weeks. So this changed a lot in the process of planning in terms of content strategy. I saw that content marketing and also PR and SEO merged together even more. I saw a lot of synergies, which make me super happy. So of course it makes the process more efficient, but also everything in terms of like content syndication. So producing any kind of content and use it for your PR, or spread it via your PR, use it for social media, create something like app integrations and everything around that. This was like a major update for me, I must say, in terms of organic and or content, let's say. So I think in all, everything a bit more agile and more efficient. Not easy, but I'm pretty much looking forward for the next year, because this is something I'm complaining the most. Every time I'm creating something new, it's like, okay, where is the PR team? Where's the SEO team? Where's the content team? Where's the branding? How about social? And it's always like the most time-consuming part of creating like content strategies, like getting everybody together and make something relevant out of it, and something efficient. So Yeah, I think that definitely would also increase like the content ROI, because this was also something like a super relevant topic this year, I would say. So I saw a lot of content attribution topics this year, because people, of course, invest a bit more into content strategies as well. So of course, people start to ask, okay, what is my ROI on that measure, right? So yeah, super interesting, and looking forward what's going to happen next year there.
Actually, it's quite nicely into another topic that I meant to ask you, Arnoud. I know that you have been playing a lot with like structured data and like schema markup and all of that nonsense. So what's your take? Is that already like, is it done and dusted, or is it gonna be kind of going kind of to evaluate, like to develop itself kind of further in the next year? Are we seeing any major changes to the standards? What's going to happen there?
No, I think there was a really interesting point being made where schema.org used to be an initiative by all search engines, as well as Amazon, as well as, but the only real contributions in the past year was basically Google. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I don't think an awful lot of SEOs know the actual power of schema. When you make a mistake in schema, and trust me, I've been there, and you stick the wrong schema on the wrong page, it doesn't do anything with SERP features, but because the intent you're targeting is different, you'll lose rankings because you're deemed irrelevant to the actual intent. So I see a lot of people chasing SERP features, and we've all been there. And I've just interviewed a few people for some roles, for SEO roles and head of SEO roles, and they were basically saying you need to go FAQ schema. I'm like, well, maybe not, because you need to have a more educated view on that. So I think it's not only on SERP features, it's also about that extra layer of content. And at some point, and this fits in pretty nicely if you go back to paid search, it's all machine learning that needs to be trained. So if you feed the wrong things in, it's going to do different things in the algorithm in paid search. But the same thing goes for educating the matching of, one call it rank brain or whatever it may be. But the machine learning algorithm, when you put schema on, that means you're validating what's there. This is a house for sale. Instead of interpreting the HTML and the content which is on the page, you make it explicit instead of implicit. So I think at some point we'll get to a place where we've trained the algorithm enough that they can just use all of that data to identify based on the HTML what's there. So I think that's the first one. I think secondly, I think we'll see a huge push into a more structured way of indexing through progressive web apps, which essentially are APIs. And when you think about it, I don't think Google doesn't like rendering because it costs them an awful lot of money. So when they get it in a very structured way, it's the easiest way to index it. So I think those are the two big things I see in the near future.
Nick, any further thoughts on schema?
Yeah, I love schema. Same thing. I think exactly to Arnoud's point that people don't properly understand it. Well, some people they think it's about search results and stars, and it's really not. It's about categorization of all your data across your site. It's a semantic web. It's understanding all these different parts of your site, your products, how they relate to each other, how they relate to the brand, what the gigabytes on storage for a phone, what does that mean, what does that metric mean. It's really it's a whole different way of explicitly giving that data to Google. And I've seen huge improvements for brand sites on Schema. But I think the difficulty you have with Schema is because it's evolving constantly. And so as a business case, to keep going back to the dev team to ask them to change things or update things is almost impossible. So I'm increasingly seeing successful deployments being a kind of external layer from the website. And I think there's some tools that do that. Schema app's doing that. We've been doing a lot through Tag Manager as well, which is also a very interesting way of doing Schema. But yeah, I think it's an area that if you're doing any kind of large site, you should be looking at very, very closely. But looking at the IDs, how they link between themselves. So you're not just, you're creating a really complex, web knowledge to give to Google. It's not just a simple markup of a simple feature.
Yeah, makes sense. So what about audio then? I mean, I've been, I think one of my keynotes I've been doing probably like a year ago or something, was when there was this initial kind of, I think, announcement. Google was saying, well, you know what, like we want to kind of go crazy on all things podcast, and it took a while, but it looked like I was not entirely off with what I've been saying around like the integration of the search results, and like now they're building their entirely own product on all things podcast. So not really surprising, I think. So what's your take? I mean, is that something that SEOs should be kind of focusing on as well?
Yeah, different media types, but I get a lot of grief for being into voice, which I know, we've talked about a lot in the past, and I still think it's going to be huge, but it's a difficult area because the problems. I mean, Google's obviously into voice. That's why it likes structured data. It's why it's doing all these other things. But the ecosystem itself needs so much more work, and you have to go beyond skills that involve Alexa skills on cat noises and Doctor Who noises, and we need to go to the next stage. We need to go to more advanced multi-step queries, and this is going to take investment from brands to get into this area. So until the brands get on board, voice isn't going to go anywhere, and I think that's really what they're waiting for. And the brands equally aren't going to make that move until they know the money's there. So it's a bit of a what happens in that thing. But there's so many smart speakers out there. Everyone's got them. We're having smart speakers installed in everything now. Any new high-end device has a smart speaker in it. So it's not as if you have to even buy a smart speaker anymore. I mean, you're going to get them in your house. Your vacuum cleaner, you're thinking, these are what they're going to have these embedded. But yeah, it's going slower than I thought it would go. So I've taken quite a lot of heat for that.
But I think if I'm not totally wrong, you can already do like stream-based bidding, right? That's already possible if I'm not totally mistaken?
Yeah, I think they're doing some bits like that, and I think some of these models are coming in. But yeah, small, it's still small.
It's more baby steps, yeah. No, but I'm not sure where I saw, but I think it was one of the Google platforms allows you to bid on like audio streams. I'm not sure where that was, but I don't know.
Might be in the GMP stack somewhere. It could be.
Yeah. I think I saw it like it came a bit after they said like when I push it into the SERPs, and then I was like, yeah, that makes sense because obviously in-stream bidding makes sense in that regard. Otherwise, as you were saying, Nick, then there's no money to be made, and then if there's no money to be made, we all know how that goes. We have to do like there's a pile of questions, so I'm just gonna quickly. I mean, we're already over time, but I kind of figured that would be happening anyways with you guys. So it's like you have still wine, right? So we're good. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So I'll just put them in here. So first one is, will Google give us a Christmas present and bring back the request indexing tool? I think what's relating to is the feature that they took away in Search Console. So Nick, what's your take on that?
I think they have to. There's been some funny noises coming out of them just saying that people misuse it a lot. I mean, there are alternative ways of getting things indexed if you have the script and time, which I'd talk about. But yeah, I think they will have to bring that back, I would say. I'd say more likely, yes.
Did you guys? Maybe that was just me, but I'm curious. So Arnold, when I saw that they kind of took it away, because I was at the same time when this entire strange things happening with their bugs that they commented afterwards. I was always under the impression, at least in the beginning, it was somewhat related, and all of a sudden afterwards they said it was not. I still don't buy this.
Me neither. And I think somebody figured out a way to mass push something. And which basically screwed a lot of their internal systems. So the easiest way for them to bring it back is just by adding a captcha on every
Oh,
request.
yeah, or some kind of limit. Yeah.
I think, but honestly, I don't think they'll bring it back very soon, because
You don't think so?
no, because they are I like them, but I also, when you know how they work, they say we will figure out once something is worth revisiting. So they're
Right.
I would I would also say they're pretty cocky in that.
Yeah,
So
and
they figure out when and how. I don't see it. I hope it does, and I hope John Mueller replies to on this tweet on Twitter somewhere saying, "Oh no, we'll get it back. It should have been back already." but let's see.
I think Gary kind of responded and said that people were misusing it a lot, and he wasn't sure what the value was. But I'm not saying if they didn't bring it back for Black Friday, they're pretty resistant, so it's not coming back easily.
Yeah, no, that's true. I was also quite surprised to see like this questionnaire that they kind of run afterwards, like in terms of like why and what are you doing with it. And I was like, well, that's fairly obvious what you would be doing with it, but maybe that's just me. You never know. So another one that we have: does the pandemic actually increase the importance and the opportunities to advertise within Google? So that probably goes a bit more into the kind of paid search direction. Maybe you want to take it first?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always important to advertise, not just because of the pandemic, but that's because
spoken as a true paid search, marketer.
Always on, not for special occasions. So, I mean, for me, of course, for some businesses that haven't advertised before, or that now maybe didn't need to advertise because they were more of an offline business and they never had a focus on it. I mean, for those kind of businesses that have to adapt and go online, go digital, and really work on their web presence, I think, for those businesses, definitely they definitely needed to pick up and do advertising. But for everyone else, I mean, it still is as relevant as before. I mean, for some industries, it's hard. They don't want to spend too much on advertising now because of Corona. The travel industry, it's a tough one. You don't want to waste too much money if people actually can't travel. All of that, obviously, you've got to be careful about. So it really depends on the business and the industry if they should do it or not. So it's a hard question to answer in general.
But you could argue other way around, like if you don't advertise yet, then maybe that's also fundamentally a problem. Yeah,
exactly. But I think it's good that it forced, like the pandemic kind of forced some businesses to move online and do more of that. And I think that's definitely a thing. I mean, actually, even for ourselves, I mean, we took looking at us as an agency, we never really did advertising before. But we started the pandemic ourselves as well, because that was the opportunity to do something like this. And so
true. Very true. Yeah. So one other topic that I find quite fascinating, and that I think is also it's one thing that I wanted to kind of pick your brains on is, I mean, and we had a bit of a separate show a while back on like SEO and UX kind of, and I think this is something that we've been saying a lot in recent months and maybe even years. Some of us did say that, well, it's kind of moving more together, and I think as Nico already said, like, SEO itself is like it's widening as a discipline, which I would completely agree with. So I mean, one of the things that has been somewhat a bit, well, overly present, to phrase it nicely, was Google talking about web performance, and specifically like the kind of core Web Vitals situation that they kind of put to market more or less, and now they kind of this, as you said, like the only answer you get, like when you ask for SEO advice, is like either you need to do like AMP or you need to make your website fast and or switch to HTTPS. I guess this is basically what it is. So I'm wondering, is that really everything? Is that really is that really those three metrics is what makes users happy, or is that maybe just kind of an intermediate and we've been seeing much more. And if so, what's going to happen after? So maybe Arnoud, you wanna start?
So first thing, I get a lot of requests saying I want to rank for this keyword, and then I go, well, okay, but let's have a look. And then I tell them, I don't think you want to rank for this keyword, but you want to rank for this intent, because those people will convert and these people won't convert. So why chase the wrong one? I think that's parts of the story where somebody tries to accomplish something which starts in search and then ends up in a good experience, which ends up at like a good business. So I think that's the big step where intent and conversion have come together. So I think in that respect, this is where UX moves towards SEO and SEO moves towards UX, user experience, and answering users' questions. And part of that is site speed. But I personally don't think that is the main reason for Google to start pushing it. When you look at a business model, it's either you make more or you save more. That's how you make more profit. And with the web growing in these kinds of levels, indexing, like the original statement once, we want to make all the information on the web indexable and findable for everyone. That becomes such a hard task with JavaScript and all these things. So rendering becomes a huge issue. So knowing Google and being a bit of a tinfoil hat, this is just a cover up of us cleaning up our code so they can do more efficient crawling. Because if we would make our pages 20 or 30 or 40% faster and leaner, that would mean billions for Google, billions in profit, because they're not spending it. So in my opinion, even though I love the framing towards users, and I think it's completely true, I think the real story is that Google just wants to save on crawling and indexing and rendering, because that's where the real money is to be made, especially in this pandemic period, if you think about it.
Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a bit tinfoil hat, isn't it? I think it's. I think that's probably partly true. I think the other thing that I see dealing with a lot of international markets is that we have to remember that a lot of these emerging markets are 70, 80% mobile. And frankly, if Google doesn't speed up on mobile, they're going to lose that potentially to an app, whether that's sort of Facebook with instant pages or something like this. But they can lose the whole of the marketplace to a faster environment. And I think that's the risk that they've always faced with the move to mobile, is how do they transition and get the web faster. So I think that's also a big factor in it, that they need to speed up the web dramatically to deal with phones and to deal with markets that are coming on that don't have the high-end iPhone or the high-end device to connect to. They need to be more inclusive, so they need websites to be significantly faster. And it does have effects on conversion. I mean, it's a good thing for UX. So whether it's going to be, and we've got this big update that's happening next May, and whether that I think there's going to be a lot of noise in the SEO community about that over the next 6 months, and I don't think it's going to have quite the effect that, it's a bit of it's a bit of a, when sometimes you have this thing flashed in front of us and everyone focuses on it, and there are other things that we could probably get better returns from, but performance is amazingly important. And I think where it has been good is that performance has become more complex, and as I said, Google's kind of winning that ecosystem argument at the moment. So in terms of their they've had a lot of traditional players in the performance field, like SOASTA, and there's run measurements, and performance isn't a new thing. There's a lot of people in SEO who think performance came about with Google. It's not. It's been around for a very long time. There's a lot of very serious, talented people in that area. I was actually in the performance team at Vodafone Group, so I worked with some of those engineers, and I learned a huge amount about performance from them. And they basically, Google's been winning that argument, and they now have a lot of their metrics being adopted, which is great by the community, by both sides, and I think that's going to give SEOs a lot more leverage into those UX teams and into those other parts of the business that they didn't have before.
They just made it significantly more visible, right? I think this is also one of the major things that they really accomplished. If I recall, like 2 or 3 years ago when I was kind of initially starting about paint timings, and like they were all mainly driven by the Chrome team at the time, right? So I think they just made use of this relatively big basis that they have, of course, and then the various teams that they can involve, and then just push it as an agenda topic, similar to switching to HTTPS or things like that, right? It's also somewhat politically motivated and driven, obviously, but I'm not saying it doesn't bring any value, but I'm just saying, and that's what I totally agree with, is the fact that the impact is entirely unclear, and I think the relation of impact versus the attention that it gets right now, I'm not really sure you would be seeing the same benefits.
And it's very arbitrary. If you look at Crux reports,
Mhm.
they say this is good, this is mediocre, and this is bad. Says who?
Yeah.
It's very tough. Those metrics are very, very tough.
They are. Yeah. The ranges are really quite tight. That's true. Yeah.
I mean, I'm to be honest, I'm more focused on the mobile update first, because they still have legacy parts of large site infrastructure. Yeah, there is still a few lingering MDOTs and stuff, and we don't know what's going to happen with that. The mobile only ranking is going to be a big thing for us, because we have got different content in those different experiences, and that's going to be quite interesting to see what effect that has.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we could have been doing like a full rundown on all like clients' accounts, just I think a couple of weeks ago again, to just double check. And as you said, there's some old ones, very old ones, where we also like, and I didn't believe that. So one of our account managers was saying that there's actually one client that is unresponsive, and they are actually now building an MDOT subdomain. Go figure, because it's so insanely easy to maintain and so much faster. And I was like, oh Jesus Christ. And I mean, they have been arguing against it, I think, ever since they started doing this, but the client just won't listen. I mean, as it is with clients, right? So
I mean, it's been interesting this year, though. I mean, in terms of that point, it's really interesting. Is the clients listening, and this is what Arnoud said about having that headspace. And we've got so much done on technical SEO on the last 7 months. We never thought would be possible, because they've literally come back and said, we got this tailwind behind us, so we're pushing digital. We've got a point where digital is essential. It's not a nice thing to have. You have to have a space on digital. I mean, 62% of online sales in the UK come through digital, and those users are getting used to that, and they're going to keep doing that after the shops open. So all of that tailwind behind it, that the senior management are now saying, well, okay, we're going to take this more seriously. What's your wish list? And you're able to go back in and say, look, this is what needs to happen, and these are the big parts of the jigsaw that need to come into place. And I think having, I've won arguments at those sort of that kind of enterprise level over the last 6-7 months. I never, would have taken years to win, or were unwinnable really before that. That's been good.
I think kind of goes back to what Yuya was saying earlier. Like all of a sudden, everyone comes and it's like, well, we need to do this and we need to do that, and like it kind of causes slight anxiety sometimes. We're like, oh shit, how am I supposed to squeeze this in? And I think I was just saying that to Dominique like the other weeks, like, well, all of a sudden, and I frankly would have not expected that. I mean, looking back a bit earlier to the year, that it kind of comes back and picks up that quickly. But I mean, there's always, and I guess it's the same for you guys when you do consulting. There's always the Q4 madness, but I think it just kind of significantly intensified this year, because everyone was like, okay, like we're kind of through this crisis situation and we still need to continue to advertise, so let's go. And everyone all of a sudden wanted to let go, and I was like, oh, that might be hard. So yeah.
It's a high demand time for the industry, absolutely massive demand, especially for large companies, because they have the money and the resources to know that they can come out of this stronger, having destroyed a lot of their competition. And this is the time you invest to come out stronger on the bounce out. And but they know next year is going to be traumatic. It's not going to be business as usual. And even where the shops are open, people are now, all those people that have been online have now got used to it, so they like the convenience of it. They're all going, oh, it's great, Amazon delivers to my door, why did I ever not do this? They're more informed consumers, they're doing better consumption, so they're all learning things that we take for granted because we're techies, and those people are going to stick with it. And you're going to have all those people still online. You're going to have all the people who want to have that omni-channel experience where they're understanding that what they're selecting, what they're seeing online is a precursor to them picking it up, getting it in the store. So all of this stuff needs to be improved drastically for next year. So that's where I'm seeing the speed up.
So I'm going to do one final quick question to everyone, and then I think we're already way past the hour mark. So
send us more wine at this rate.
Yeah. Well, that's an easy thing to solve. So, like from each and every one of you, I think we start. Just Dominique kind of takes the lead. So, what's one thing that you guys are going to do next year? So, what are you focusing on for next year, professionally, whatever? So, what is for you the single most important thing for next year?
Let me think about it. The most important thing next year will be so I think my topic, I already touched on it, is I think will be a bit more in the direction of content synergies. So this is what I see will be my major part. So getting more like SEO involved into our strategies, getting like content syndication through different kind of channels. Also getting closer with Julia, I would say, in terms of whenever we talk about native advertising, there's always a question, okay, how do we implement that? And is it more on the content marketing side? Is it more the PPC side and everything around that? So to get everything a bit more integrated, but also getting faster in content, I would say, because Nick already mentioned there just a few seconds ago that people are getting used to it. They get used to, so the behavior changed during that year for people. So they expect also being faster for companies and brands. So getting faster in communication and getting faster in, I don't know if it's on social media, but also on blogs, magazines, or whatever. So I think this is something I will have on my agenda next year, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So Julia, you can only say the same now, obviously, otherwise it wouldn't work.
It's so funny because the one thing that I wanted to mention is for me as well, the more the cross-channel diversification, just because we do have all those expertises in the different areas, and I do feel like having a great cross-channel and integrated strategy is such an important point, and having all those experts in the different areas, we really do need to focus on talking together more and working on all those client strategies together. And you feel it from the kind of requests coming in from potential leads and clients that this is a thing that's becoming more and more important. And so that's definitely one thing I really want to focus on and get more into. And but there's so many things, like definitely automation, also first party data. There's so many things we want to focus on, so it's hard to say just one. But yeah.
Fair enough. Arnoud.
I think one big goal I've set is to get multiple big clients onto performance budgets in their automated testing. So this basically means that before anything gets pushed live, it hits any thresholds we set. So there is a great Lighthouse NPM command line interface that you can just implement with performance budget. So that's the one thing. On a more personal and education level, I want to get more into the psychology of humans. I really think that will help me in getting stuff implemented, but also in optimizing websites. So that is something I just personally want to get into. And I think thirdly, the part where I'm lacking is using more JavaScript and GTM kind of stuff. So digging into that. And those are the main things that I wish. And this is one that will relate to Nick and probably Bastian as well. I wish that SEO wouldn't be a marketing thing or technical SEO, but it would go into product or a digital. So I really want to do some talks on where your technical SEO internally should sit and not talk to marketing. So those are the three main goals.
Understood. That makes sense, I guess. Yeah. Nick.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I'm quite lucky to work in product teams, so I quite like that. But I've worked both, and yeah, I think for me it's still technical SEO. We kicked off so many large architecture projects over this year that are going to continue into next year, that are mammoth. I mean, the aggregation of multiple CCTLDs into single domains, that's huge. The schema again has worked really well, and an area that I've got particularly fascinated about recently has been edge SEO. So doing stuff in Akamai, in Cloudflare, and you're going to see a lot of that over next year, where you can use the edge to fix some issues that may be present from the CMS that you can fix at that level, or else just reducing load on the end origin server because you're doing your redirects, etc., on the edge instead, or so that's an area that I've spent a lot of time on, and I'm really enjoying my time with other cloud engineers learning about edge compute. So that's going to fry my brain for the next 3 months.
Nice. Yeah, that's a really exciting. It's quite funny that this now kind of gets a bit more traction on the mainstream. It's actually a topic that I kind of talked about at the Oktoberfest 4 years ago, I think. Not from the server side, well, from the server side, but not from the edge, but rather from building something as a server side module rather than fixing your CMS, because in DevOps you get resources, on Dev you don't. So that was one of the very well kind of received talks at the time. So I'm finding it quite fascinating that this kind of hits more like the mainstream, which makes sense, I think, especially with the features that Cloudflare and kind of their workers bring to the table. That's super powerful if you have the time to kind of play with it. Yeah, agreed.
And for you, Bastian.
For me, oh boy, yeah, that is a very good question. I mean, luckily we have two incredibly smart women that do a lot of the operational work at PK. So I have to say, I think without those two, that my day and also Marcel's day, I think, would look very much different. That's for sure. No, I mean, I think there's a bunch of things, but technically, what I really enjoyed and what I want to bring back. And that was where also some of my talks earlier this year was around the PK's test lab. So we have this entire framework set up where you can just run a multitude of different things and just play with stuff and break things and then just see why that happened and what happens. Because I feel that this is just not happening enough. There's so many information out there that where people are just kind of reusing information that they had consumed at some point without understanding it either, or without understanding the context that kind of happened in. So I feel like, and I guess that's also equally the challenge. I mean, of course, testing in SEO is quite hard because of the parameters that you can't control, et cetera, et cetera. But I think if you're not trying and then kind of getting at least to a certain opinion, even though that can be wrong, then I think you're losing out. So we have been so busy in the last weeks and months that we just that kind of slowed down. But I think there's one talk that I will be doing, I think, in February next year, and so I really want to kind of revamp that over the holidays and kind of start collecting a bit more data, which would mean that I really need the request indexing thing back, which otherwise it's much more complicated. So I would not be too unhappy if that were actually happening. Otherwise, it's again this damn API, which anyways. So yeah, that's the one thing. And then I think the other thing, I think as a business, we've been changing quite a bit over the year. Of course, we've been not growing as fast as we used to in the other years, which was extraordinary in terms of growth. But we did the team change. We kind of have really cool new people that just recently joined. I think we kind of back to relatively strong growth, looking at the numbers that are now somewhat locked in for the first quarter. So I think business-wise, we have a lot of work to do as a company as well, because things have changed. We developed as a company. We've won different accounts, different clients. The challenges kind of have shifted. There's a lot more multi-channel work. We touched on that a bit earlier. So this also kind of requires us from an organizational perspective to undergo some changes, which is always interesting. So Dominique had kind of her team restructured, and now Yulia somewhat followed. So we kind of moved to more cross-departmental things. And I think this cross-functional teams, and I think this is like the challenge. So there's going to be a lot of organizational work, organizational and process work, which needs to be done. So that's probably another big bucket. Yeah. I would imagine, and personally, I really need to get back on a plane. I'm going batshit crazy. If I continue to have to stay in here, then I'm not sure if I might lose my mind at some point. So, I definitely give it another quarter, and then my vaccine stocks are doing really well. So I just hope that they kind of hold their promise, and then that we kind of get this through the door.
PK's vaccine, that'd be a great swag. Can we do that? That'd be awesome.
I honestly hope that we kind of meet in person, hopefully in the second half of next year, when this is at least. I think we all agree it's not over, but at least it's a bit more under control. I think this is what's needed, and if that's the case, and people behave somewhat reasonable, and we have the vaccine there, then I think that's going to happen. So yeah, hopefully at least. Anyhow, thank you very, very much for joining. It was great fun. Really enjoyed it. Great that you could kind of make the time. I think I guess also the entire team of PKs wishes you guys a very, very happy Christmas, relaxed couple of days at least. Take some time off. Cheers. Take some time off. That's always needed, right? And then hopefully we can kind of have you back on the show during the course of next year.
That'd be great. Yep, awesome. Absolutely. Anytime.
Fantastic. So I think since we're already way over we're almost close to 1.5 hours, so that's probably close to the record. So I'm gonna at least switch off this stream now. So in this case, officially, this is the goodbye.
Bye.